I am a 37-years-old male. I have a 13Y0 son. I was a widower when I met my now wife. She has a 16Y0 daughter from another relationship. The family is often on pretty good terms. My son is the quiet one in the house. He keeps to himself a lot, but not to the point of being concerning. My wife and stepdaughter are the complete opposite. They both encourage him to be outgoing and share activities and join gatherings with extended family. My son complained about having to be forced out of his comfort zone and having his need for space invalidated. I spoke to both my wife and stepdaughter and asked them to give him space and freedom to spend his time however he wanted. They apologized and promised to let him be. As Mother's Day was approaching, I wanted to throw my wife a surprise Mother's Day celebration. It was no longer a surprise because my stepdaughter gave her the heads so she could prepare. Yesterday I got off work earlier than usual to get final arrangements done. We planned to celebrate at the restaurant and invited her family there. I had the key, and while I was entering the house through the front door, I overheard my wife and stepdaughter talking to my son. My wife was asking my son if he could convince me to let him stay home and not go with them to the restaurant to celebrate. I paused and decided to keep listening. My son said why, and she told him that his introverted and socially inept attitude will make her family uncomfortable and will ruin the mood. He promised her that he'd be well behaved and would try to interact and socialize with everyone, but she said that she wasn't buying it. He kept reassuring her, but she snapped and told him that technically she's not his mom, so she didn't get why he wanted to celebrate Mother's Day with her so badly. My stepdaughter threw some, I don't remember, backhanded comment, and then both of them were shocked to see me standing there. Both were staring without saying anything. I told my son and his stepsister to go to their rooms, then told my wife that the celebration was off, cancelled. She tried to argue, asking why repeatedly, and I told her why. She tried to explain that she didn't mean it like that and that I only heard part of the conversation but not all of it. I told her I was done arguing and the decision was already made. She yelled, asking what she was going to tell her family, and said that I was making tremendous mistake towards her. I ignored her while she kept throwing tantrum after a tantrum. Early this morning she took my stepdaughter and went to stay with her folks. Not a single call or text from her so far. Situation is full of tension. I'm upset still, but more hurt, to be honest. I mean, yes, I did say I was going to have this celebration, but I thought that what she said to my son was too harsh to ignore. Back in November 2018, I was arrested at work in front of my boss and coworkers. It was the most humiliating thing I've ever experienced. I later learned at the police station that I was being charged with multiple felonies. This came as a huge surprise. Luckily, I was able to keep my wits and lawyer up instead of speaking with the detective. For $13,000, which completely wiped my savings, I was able to retain a criminal defense attorney. However, it cost me everything, and I was unable to pay my bond. This resulted in me staying in jail for a total of 54 days. At a status hearing, my attorney presented video evidence of me gassing up my car 3 hours away from where the crimes took place, and I ended up having all my charges dismissed. When I finally got out, I learned that I had lost my job, was in the process of being evicted, and my son was in the state's care. His mother is a heroin addict, and I haven't spoken to my own parents in nearly 15 years. They wouldn't let him go to my girlfriend because they didn't consider her family. Since my release, I've learned that I can't sue the police, and no one gives a shit that I was locked up for 54 days because the detective did poor investigation work. I've gone to the local press about this and was told that what happened to me happens quite a bit. They took down my info but never followed up. So what I did was create a website sharing my story. I also uploaded the police report and some other documents from the discovery. Literally, the only reason why I was arrested was because an eyewitness said they saw me. If the detective had done his job, he could have verified that I wasn't even in town on the day the crimes took place. This is what pisses me off the most. My life was ruined because of a lazy employee. My website is now ranked number 2 on the first page of search results when you type in my town's name. I live in a touristy town and we attract a lot of visitors over the summer. My web traffic has more than quadrupled, and apparently it's gotten someone high up's attention. I received a cease and desist letter recently, which I showed to my attorney. He said sharing my experience online isn't illegal and that everything I had stated was a fact or my own opinion. protecting me from a defamation lawsuit. Yesterday I received a visit from 2 officers and the detective who had arrested me. He apologized, stating mistakes can happen. They then talked to me about my website and asked if I could remove it. I said I would delete it on the condition that the detective leave his job and never do police work again. Suffice to say that isn't happening. After the visit I received, I'm more pissed off that the only reason the detective apologized to me was to get me to take down my website. I don't plan to, and the only one supporting this is my girlfriend. My friends think I'm being spiteful and have suggested that I just delete it. I travel for work and my employer allows me to spend up to $100 / day on food. If I don't use it, I don't get to pocket the money. When traveling, I make sure to use the full $100 every day, so I'm eating very well. My wife is upset with me because I get to eat out for every meal at least 2 weeks a month. She says it isn't fair and I should just go to the grocery store and bring back food to my hotel. I've explained to her that it doesn't make sense since I don't get to keep the money if I don't use it. Every evening when I call her, she wants to know exactly what I ate. She can see the credit card statements reimbursed by employer, so she knows how much I spent. She'll see I spent $75 on dinner and start freaking out about how wasteful I am. I take her out for dinner at least 2 times a week when I'm in town, and she goes out several times a week with friends when I'm not in town. This whole thing just seems irrational, and it is really putting a strain on our relationship. I haven't gained any weight and am in great shape. I focus on quality of food much more than quantity. Most hotels have a small gym and / or a pool. I can't buy groceries or gift cards to bring home. It is against policy. I submit pictures of the receipts, so this wouldn't work. I track all my expenses and submit receipts for reimbursement weekly. I float the money for 7 days max. Usually I have around $3,000 to $4,000 in expenses per week, which we can make work without any issues since I pay for all my food, airfare, hotels, and car rentals myself. I collect an enormous amount of points and other perks. These points allow me to go on at least 2 vacations a year with my wife for next to nothing. We went to Spain early this year for 2 weeks and spent under $400 for the entire trip. Not using a company card is one of the best perks. Using a different credit card is not on the table. My wife and I have all our finances together. We both think it's important to be 100% transparent with money. We don't have any kids. She started a business selling Mary Kay a few years ago. She is working really hard to expand and find new customers. She likes the idea of being her own boss, and I try to do everything I can to support her. I'm rarely gone for 2 weeks at a time. Sometimes I'm gone for only 2 days. On average, a trip lasts 5 days and I go on 3 a month. A lot are saying Mary Kay is a pyramid scheme. I don't really know that much about the details of the business. I see a lot of women selling makeup, candles, and diet-related products, so I thought this was normal. We've put in around $50,000 over the past 2 years. Most of the money goes towards buying inventory and training seminars. I'll have to do some research to see what is going on. My day-to-day is anything but glamorous. I've spent more time in the airport than I even care to think about. Things go wrong often on the logistical side. My work can be very stressful, but I've gotten very good at managing the workload. My boss encourages us to use the full expense amount. He understands the stress involved traveling so much. He's actually working on increasing the amount to $140 / day because of inflation. So I recently got together with a guy from my hobby. He asked me out first and I had some doubts that we'd work together as a couple because of the age difference. He's 35 and I'm 22. So, in my apartment, since it's an old house that was originally a single-family house, there isn't much soundproofing. And the floors creak when people move. I've gotten used to the sound of the guy upstairs getting up at 4 a.m. since he starts work at 5. And the sound of the girls in the apartments to either side of mine watching telenovelas till midnight, taking work calls all day and having friends over on weekend nights. I know when I play music or have friends over, some of the sound leaks through the walls. So I'd never get upset about hearing my neighbors because it goes both ways. So, when my boyfriend started coming over more often, he had complaints about the neighbors, which put me in an awkward place he wanted to go speak to them or have me text them, and I said no. For example, one of the early times he stayed over, we went to bed around 10. He wanted me to ask my neighbor to turn down her TV. I said she didn't have it that loud and she turns it off at midnight anyway. At 4 a.m., he got very irritated with my upstairs neighbor getting up and cooking breakfast. I said that he would be done by 5 because that's when his shift starts. At 7 a.m., he was still trying to sleep in, and the neighbor on the other side had some work calls that he said he couldn't sleep through. I offered him earplugs and he said he couldn't sleep with them in either. He wanted me to ask her to quiet down. He had similar comments every time he heard someone else in the building just living their life, especially if it was when he was in bed. I got frustrated with my boyfriend and told him, you can't expect to date a hot young 22-year-old and not want to deal with a 22-year-old's living situation. I don't know if you realize, but this is a normal apartment for someone my age. Hell, my neighbors are pretty great. Nobody's throwing loud parties on work nights. Nobody's having screaming fights. Nobody's having babies. The hot young part was in sarcastic air quotes because those were his words, not mine. He got irritated and asked why I was bringing age into it. And I said it's because he can't both want someone so young and also want someone with house kinda money. And he was being so out of touch with how normal people in their 20s live. He got really irritated with me bringing age into it. And even more annoyed when I'd respond to his neighbor complaints in the future with, "Okay, boomer." Or tell him that if he wanted me to have a rich person apartment, he could pay for it. It's not possible for me to get to his house on my own because I don't have a car and the buses don't go that far into the suburbs. So that would mean him driving 30 minutes from his house in the suburbs to pick me up, then an extra 30 to drive me to his house. Then an hour round trip early in the morning to get me home in time for work. It's a lot easier for him to visit me in the city. I am using boomer as a joke or a figure of speech to say acting out of touch and entitled to tell other people what to do. It is a common figure of speech to say, "Okay, boomer," to someone who is acting entitled regardless of their actual age. It's more of a mindset thing. I googled his property records for his house and he owns it with a woman who shares his last name. Holy shit. I don't know if she's his wife or ex-wife or what, but I'm out of here. I'm honestly freaking out right now, but I just gotta say, great big thank you to everyone who noticed red flags and made me question that. I've blocked his number. He can have fun figuring out where I went.